Introductions of who's here from ACC. So we have our treasurer, Mr. David Studelberg, our secretary, Ms. Kathy Hedberg, our vice president, Mr. David Rosenall, our general manager, Monty Medley, and then our good friend, Jim Geary, who's been spearheading our working group, RV storage working group, since we had official notification of this. So just, again, we realize you guys are super busy. I'm going to have Mayor Martinez open up the meeting. As I mentioned earlier, as you guys know, ACC has several decision points that we have to make in planning to get ready for this construction endeavor. So with that being said, I'd like to turn it over to Mayor Martinez for arranging this meeting and thanking her once again.
Good morning, LJ. Good morning, everybody that's here this morning to this meeting. I just want to clarify before you start asking questions and you know, want some answers. I just want to clarify to ACC and with Mr. Raul Cecin present that we have not met behind closed doors. LJ, myself, and you. I want to clarify that we have not. The only meeting that we had was back when we were in the meeting. LJ, Monty, myself, and Mr. Cecin, and your staff.
Yes, correct.
Right? That is correct.
That is correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure that you all know what is going on right now. And I know that you all wanted to meet with Commissioner Fuentes and Raul Cecin, that you can be helped to ACC in the, you know, what on the drainage. So thank you all for being here. And with that, LJ.
All right, thank you so much. So again, Mr. Cecin, we're just going to ask the same question again.
Sure.
What is the projected start time, estimated time for this?
You want to say anything? Once you open up.
Oh, yes, Mr.
Yes, so
Fuentes.
good morning. Thank you for inviting us here. Thank you, Mark, for reaching out and coordinating this meeting on our behalf. I think it's you're accurate in the sense that we've had a couple of meetings about this. I do remember being here before and discussing it, and that there had been some questions about existing buildings or structures that were in the pathway of where the drainage improvements would need to be, and that's probably been the biggest obstacle that we've had to overcome. And the one that we're sensitive to from the standpoint of consideration when we decide on what to do, because it's not just a matter of what we can do, because there's probably a few options that we have, but we want to choose one that is mutually beneficial for us, in the sense that we don't want to have to knock down your golf cart maintenance area and then have to rebuild that. We want to find some sort of alternative pathway where we can still get the same effectiveness of the improvements that we're trying to put in, with cost considerations on both sides. If we bypass your golf cart maintenance area and build around it to some degree, if that's not necessarily quite accurate, but for us, but I think in the long term for both of us, it's mutually beneficial. So I think the first thing we need to actually talk about is have Mr. Cecin give us the options that are on the table. Because I want to say that we've had these discussions before, but there has never been, from our side, we have to make a determination as to what we can afford to do and how we, in an effective way, fiscally responsibly, because there's not, we have to create the project itself. The second thing is, how can Alamo Country Club participate in this? Not necessarily that there's a cost component to it, but a couple of alternatives as to putting the improvements in may require that Alamo Country Club allow us access to some of its property so that we can bypass that golf cart storage area. So I think that Mr. Cecin needs to give us the options that we have on the table, that we come to a conclusion as to what is the best option. And then Mr. Cecin and I will go back, we'll crunch the numbers, make sure that everything is good, and then come back to you, whether it's in an email, a phone call. It doesn't have to be a formal meeting like this. And then we can give you a plan of action as to how we're going to get it done. I think that the first thing you should understand, aside from what I just mentioned, is that we're fully committed to trying to help. We're fully committed to trying to find a solution that makes sense. So we're here in the spirit of trying to find that solution, and we're going to. We just need to talk it out to come up with the best option, and then we'll figure out the time frame, the funding, and all of that stuff. A lot
Okay.
of that is on our table. We have that responsibility of
Right.
funding it. But we want to assure you that we want to find something that's going to provide the solutions that you're looking for.
Okay,
With
perfect.
that being said, unless you have any questions for me, I'll hand it over to Mr. Sassine because he's worked with his staff to try to come up with different options. And I think we know which one is the best, but we'll present it and then we'll discuss it.
Okay,
Can I make a clarification just real quick? Just, you refer to these sheds out there being golf cart and maintenance. These are full-blown garages, if I can use that term,
Sure.
that the people park motor homes in. No golf carts, they're motor homes. Some of them aren't used that anymore. They are stuffed with American junk.
Storage workshops, things like that.
Yeah.
yeah, workshops.
So from that standpoint, it's not a matter of a little golf cart or what. People do that and work on that. These are storage structures that people have converted into. So that kind of maybe complicates our end of it a little bit in doing that.
Right.
And thank you. Yeah.
But we don't want to disrupt it.
Yeah,
Yes, so ultimately,
understand
whatever
that.
structures you have out there are
Yes.
functional or operational or have their purpose. And
Right.
we don't want to disrupt that.
Right. Okay,
Great. Good morning, everyone. So yeah, so as Commissioner mentioned, we have met several times. As you mentioned earlier, Mayor, we met. And I think prior to that, we had some discussions about the project and
Mhm.
just some historical, right? This project came forward. We had some rain events, had some issues. We've got a lot of growth in the area as well. So just commissioners, we looked at the south side of the expressway, we looked at the north side. Right now we're in the construction on the south side to expand that system to help, the city on the south side. Now we're looking at this project, the north side, and the reason this project, we developed cost and so forth for this north side. We were trying to apply for a 2018, 2019 application. And unfortunately, we were not able to submit at the city because of a bit of a cost ratio requirement that is tied to those applications.
Mhm.
That type of funding requires a BC evaluation. I believe a consultant for the city was telling us, no, it's not going to meet the requirements. So he left it alone, but we did develop the options and develop the plan of what we would do. So the construction of this project will come in the future. Right now, we don't have a firm date to say.
Mhm.
Back then we did because it's 18, 19. If it would have gone through, then probably next year, if it would have been awarded, and then we would have had a time frame to work with, right?
Mhm.
Based on the award, and then they would have given us a time frame to do the work. So right now it's still an open-ended time frame. So it's not like, oh, we're going to start next year. No, that's not the case. It is an identified project, and it's going to depend on commissioner and the precinct working, what he is looking at district-wide and the impacts that we have to determine the identification of the project and what funding it falls under and things of that nature. So having said all that, we did work on a plan. The original plan was to widen the system in place, address some of the encroachments that are in place there right now. The structures, right? Regardless of what they're for, they're structures, they're encroaching. And
When you say encroaching, they're in district.
yeah, in the right of way. Yeah, they're encroaching to the right of way. So, right now we maintain basically all the way up to that quarter mile. From there south all the way down to the floodway, basically that system, right? And then from there north, it is an irrigation system. And then from north of the expressway, north of 495, we take over again and maintain all the way to our north main drain,
Mhm.
which is just north of Canton there,
Mhm.
south of Wisconsin. So that's kind of that gap in between is an irrigation district drainage system, but the district steps in a lot of times and creates these larger facilities with the growth that we're having. And we know the water, and manage it, so forth. So, the initial option was improve the drain, identify the encroachments that we're having in the right of way, and we discussed the moving, obviously, of those structures so we can clearly widen what we need to widen. Another option that we talked about in the preliminary talks was the possibility of rerouting the ditch around the property owned by the Alamo Country Club, and the dedication of that right of way, right? The acquisition of that right of way and the cost associated with that. And I think there was even discussion, the ACC said, well, maybe we can look at that, maybe we could acquire that. Would that help? I said, well, yeah, I mean, obviously that would expedite that work and help that. And those were discussions that was had, initially. And then we looked at, well, possibility of running a underground system, leaving the ditch open north and south, and running an underground system within the ACC property, right? I think the way that, if I recall correctly, and maybe correct me on this, but I think you have some north and south structures, east and west, and north and south, but there's an open area in between, right? Where it looks like you have mobile parks or maybe trailers or something like that, which would not be an issue parking on top of an underground system, right? And that bypass system would work in conjunction with the open system that's already in place, right? So basically, the capacity that was going to be gained with the improvements would be gained via the underground system, right? And obviously those options add additional cost to the project, right? Preferred option would be, well, everything's in the right of way. We widen, we manage it in the right of way. There's no acquisition, there's nothing to be done. There's no additional cost to the project, right? The other two options that I mentioned, which, just briefly discussed, are additional cost options, right? And that's where Commissioner is mentioning the evaluation of that to see what option we'll go with. We'll be in conversation with the Commissioner on, and we'll work through that. So that's basically what it is. But just to clarify, there is no firm time frame that we're going to start. We have not identified funding for this project yet, but it is a project that is in the books that we believe needs to be done as we continue to see growth in this area, which is good.
So let's recap real quick. So the first option, to clarify, right, is that there are certain structures that are in our right of way right now, right? And what we don't want to do is have those knocked down or move them in an effort to widen the ditch, because I think that'll be more costly.
Right.
I mean, obviously they're functional or being used to some extent. Option two would be to acquire some land around ACC.
Right, in the little area that they have, there's some land south and east of that's open land, right? That could be acquired, additional. Then we talked about that acquisition too.
But we would have to buy that property,
Yes,
and then develop the plans to include it as part of the
That is
system.
correct. Yes.
Then the third option you gave us is using the ACC property that exists right now, going between the structures and creating an underground facility to create an additional bypass.
That's correct.
Because you're not going to close up.
No,
the
the
other
ditch has to
system.
stay open. The volume of that ditch is too much.
So that system will continue to be used. What we're talking about is potentially putting a line in the
Yes.
middle. And you
It's an
would
L
need
shape, yes, sir.
an easement of some kind just to have the access to the property,
Yes, correct.
and then put the,
Installation, everything.
Cover it?
Cover it.
as long as no vertical structures go on that property,
No permanent
it wouldn't affect them as far as usability.
The only issue you gotta remember is you gotta consider there is a high pressure natural gas pipeline that runs northeast corner to southwest corner.
Right, and that's
So-
one of the things we looked at, right? We talked about that. We
Right, so I'm
said-
just saying, just to make sure
We
that you're
talked
aware
about
of
that. It's
that.
not as clean, and that's what I was mentioning. We had these discussions.
Yeah,
Right.
we did.
We did.
Threw these in the air, and we
Yep.
said, look, we're trying to work through this, but that's another option. We got to look at constructability and, costs associated with that gas line and things like that. Because if the gas company says, we got to relocate the gas line, well, then that even creates a bigger issue, right? Anything financially can be addressed, right?
Right.
Usually a gas line depends on the size of the gas line. Our experience has been anywhere from $250,000 to $1 million in adjustment costs. That's usually been for the low to the high, right? Depending on the size of line, depending on the utility. If we can make it work, we make it work. We don't know the depth of anything. So again, this is just a very preliminary evaluation.
Right.
What we looked at in addition to the other costs, right? So that's why the second option was, something that we could look at. We talked about, because then that's open field. The gas line we encountered, it could be an aerial crossing, and so the pipe. But we're still looking at options, right? We haven't vetted them all to the detail, but that was the discussion that we had.
To what extent would ACC have to participate in options 2 and 3? Because I think like 1, we don't really want to have to knock down buildings, right?
Right.
I think that's kind of like our last resort. Out of options 2 and 3, what are you thinking that Alamo Country Club would have to participate?
Well, what we had talked about is, option 2 would be the additional right-of-way that we talked about, right? That could be acquired in lieu of having to knock the structures down, right? Or move out of the right-of-way, and in other words, replace what's there that we have the accessibility to. And that was the discussion that we talked about. And on the third one, well, it becomes a cost issue, right? To bypass and to keep the structure, it's the cost of the construction of the facility, the underground system that really, we don't need it if we go straight.
So if you, just because I'm not engineering on the flow of water. So if we're able to get the additional land that goes around the thing, that would probably put in another 3 or 4 90-degree turns on that ditch. Is that an issue with the flow of water?
No.
Okay.
I'd like to bring up, you asked for our participation. Right now, if things don't change and the buildings have to come down, okay, we are looking at a minimum of the cost of all of our members of around $100,000. In addition to that, if the buildings had to come down, and we would then, the only way that we could accommodate the members would be to buy additional land, what you're talking about, where you're going, and rebuild the buildings. And we're looking at about 500 to 600,000 for that to happen. So when you ask for our participation, I think we very easily could participate financially to make that option happen. If you were looking for acquiring, we would look to acquire the amount of property you would need. What is that on the other side?
East.
East and south.
East.
Is that the east side?
East side.
That's where you're proposing?
Yeah.
And then turn that land over to the commission or give you right away that you needed. You would have to tell us how much right away we would need to purchase from the people who own that land, and exactly how much you need to get around and back through again. I think we probably have to deal with 2 different parties. There may be only one that owns it, but I think we could very easily have discussions with you, because if nothing happens, the minimum amount we're going to spend is $100,000 right
Sure.
now.
And that was one
And the owners are, the owners are still out.
Actually, Dave,
I'm
that's,
talking about putting the new fence that needs to go up. That's 45,000, and it's about 50 or 60,000 to remove the buildings.
it's actually a little bit less than that. On the bids I got, it's about 36,000 to remove the buildings, and like you said, 40 to replace the fencing.
Yeah, so somewhere
So
between
about
75
100,000
and
would be our
$100,000.
would be our high number.
Yeah, and we would look at that. I mean, we're not going to ask, and again, commissioner's going to tell me, hey, make it work as best as possible to help the community, and don't burn them. I mean, that's what he's-
Once you get your funding, we are willing to participate in that project in any way that we can. We would love to be able to leave those buildings just the way they are. And we will do everything, I think, as a board, RV owners and members, to help make that happen. The only question that's kind of up in the air right now is the lease. Right now, ACC owns the land and the buildings, and we have the members that have RVs out there and sheds. They have is it 10 or 15-year lease? 15-year lease from us. So we are not, because we thought the project was going to start in 6 months or less. And we were not going to renew the leases until such time that the dust has settled. So, we would love to be able to, if it's going to take about a year or so for this project to really start. It sounds like you've got a lot of work to do to get your funding, to get everything in place and start the project. And I'm sure the day it starts, it's not going to be at Alamo. It's going to be someplace south
North, hopefully.
or north, is it, wherever it is, will start before it gets to us. So we would love to be able to let our RV owners keep their RVs and everything out there for at least a year, if that would work. But I know I can't say, well, geez, you can't do that project.
Well, we're not legal people, and certainly my advice is just a suggestion, but maybe you have an option to give them a 60-day notice or 90-day notice. Trust me, this is not going to happen overnight.
No.
And once we get approval, it's not going to start the next day. So I think that we could give you ample notice to have a 90-day out clause and just a 90-day notice to give them an option to look for another place to.
I think what we would look at in the lease agreement is that we would renew the leases on the 1st of March. And if that the project started within that year's period, we would reimburse the members for whatever a certain amount that they paid. You know, if it was, they were able to keep them 6 months, then we would reimburse them 6 months of their fees that they pay. That sound reasonable?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm done talking.
I do have a question with these two, with option 2 and option 3. Okay, and I know there's a lot of work that you guys have to look at and the feasibility of it and the cost part of it, the fiduciary end of it. When will we know which option we're going to go with? I know there's some work on our part about purchasing the land or seeing if they're willing to sell the land, because that is irrigated farmland, and it is farmed. But what will be for us the notification? I mean, are we looking at 30 days? We're looking at 90 days? We're looking at 180 days? What is it going to be?
I would suspect that Mr. Cecina is going to tell me that he's going to have his engineers put a cost projection together for both options.
Right.
A proposed time frame as to how long it would take for land acquisition, right-of-way dedication, which can all probably be done simultaneously.
Right.
And we would work together to coordinate that, because I'm sure that if ACC were to purchase this, we would ask either for a dedication of the right-of-way during the platting process or during the purchase,
Right.
or easement or whatever. I would guess right away, because we're going to be doing some construction in there. I would propose that we get back to you within the next few weeks.
Okay.
I would say
That-
within maybe 30 days to come up with some reasonable cost projections
Right.
and timeframes, because some of it will take longer than other parts. If
Right.
we have resistant landowners, and we have to talk about that. Yes.
Let's say we go with and we do purchase the land. Can we also cancel the right of way that does go through where our buildings are existing?
Not
Because
necessarily.
because then we still are up in the air if that ever has to happen.
We can look into that and probably,
But I would like to say, if we're going to give you this, then we get that one back.
we would look at that. Yeah, we can
Okay.
legally look at that. I think there's something that could legally be done. Again, we're just gonna, he's a CPA, I'm an engineer. We're not attorneys, so, but we could
No, I'll
definitely,
get
we
about this,
have
but-
staff
But
attorneys
you
to look
understand,
at.
because that doesn't eliminate the
Like an
problem of our
exchange.
structure being built on a right of way.
We have staff attorneys. I mean,
And we
look
can
at
get that right of way given back to us.
If there's an option legally for us to do an exchange where you've secured that, so it's no longer in right of way and you don't have to worry about that, then we'll certainly do that, and we'll explore that option with our attorneys.
Every option, yes.
Yes, sir.
So one of the things for ACC that kind of throws a big kicker in this is we have approximately 30 owners out there of these sheds, occupiers, lessors, that develop these buildings or purchase them, some of them as high as $10,000, that are not going to get reimbursed of those costs. Because they are people that invested on their own, and we can't ask our association of 400 other members to reimburse them for those costs. We would have a civil war, I'm sure. But so that kind of compounds our our situation here in regards is that we have a lot of people here that's going to lose something that they have invested in. Some of them have had it for years, have a good attitude. We're only paying $150 a year rent on this, or lease, or fee. So I got my money's worth. There were some people that invested in those within the last 6 months. Again, $10,000. They're going to lose $10,000 or $8,000 or whatever it might be. So we do have to strike a ground that hopefully we can help them in some way, and possibly if we do have to tear down these buildings, in doing your budgeting, is there anything that you could include to help mitigate some of that cost to these people? Is it as a part of construction?
Well, we want to be sensitive to that. And I
Yes.
think that's how we started the conversation. It's like, let's
Yeah.
explore other options
Yeah.
so that we don't get to that point. We don't
Right.
want to hurt anybody in the process.
Right.
All we're trying to do is create a solution that's going to help mitigate the flooding.
Right. And I think if option one, the worst case scenario, that's when we're going to come back to you for relief of the cost, like David said, between 75 and 100,000, if somehow on that.
Legally, I don't think we could.
Okay.
Because, you know, you're
Understood.
You're encroaching on the right of way.
Right.
We would have to tell you, you move, or we end up moving.
Right.
That would be, and we would look at legal, right?
Right.
To see that, because in other projects that we've been a part of, when we have encroachments, they have to move their encroachments.
Right.
It's not that we pay them, hey, we've got to restitute you for your stuff that you built illegally across an easement that you shouldn't have built. So,
Right.
that would be the challenge, right? So
Mhm.
just, you know,
Yeah,
from
well,
historical that
certainly-
we've seen.
certainly this encroachment on your easement came as a surprise to every one of us, because nothing we have in our records even indicated there was an easement. These buildings were built 25 years ago, and we don't know what kind of permission they got from anybody or what have you. So, you know, we all know that 25, 30 years ago, a lot of things are done handshake, what have you. Not to say that that's wrong. It's the right way, in my opinion, to do things, and you honor that. But now we're stuck downstream, and when we told all these people, you are encroaching 20 feet into this easement and your building's got to go. I mean, it was like we dropped a nuclear bomb in the middle of our community. So,
Typically, when you do a title search before you do construction, those things come up. But if somebody
Right.
purchased it with cash,
Yeah.
and they just said, hey, this land is available, and they do
Yeah.
it, those kind of things don't come up.
not saying that we did anything right
No,
here,
no.
but we're picking up.
We've seen many of those.
Yeah,
Believe me.
yeah,
We- everything, we've seen a lot of different stuff. Yes.
So our sole purpose is, and again, I appreciate you gentlemen being here and talking to us, is that we can at least show our community that we're doing everything that we can to protect their interests and ours and yours too. I mean, we're not denying that we're
Commissioner, like he said, you know, we're going to try to find the best solution for everyone, right? We don't want to be knocking down structures, right? That's not our goal, right? We'll definitely look at it.
That's our worst case scenario. And that's why I said,
Yep.
I think we've got other options that hopefully will be a lot less intrusive, that will be less disruptive. So
Yes.
now that we've shared those ideas, we'll go back and we'll put together some cost projections. We'll get back
Okay.
in touch with the mayor, let you know when we're ready to meet so that we can come and show you those proposals.
Do we want to start a contact list, an email contact list, so we can, besides always trying to, we
Absolutely.
realize you guys are super busy, and Mrs. Sassine has an $85 million budget that, you know, with all drainage and stuff like that. And, you know, Mr. Fuentes, I mean, you guys are extremely busy.
We have support staff, and that's why Saul is here. Saul works a lot with the
Okay.
mayor in the past and coordinating things with the city of Alamo.
Right.
Amy has been added to you know, the same team so that
Wonderful.
we can provide a better follow-up. So on Mr. Sassine's side, I'm not going to speak for him, but he's got Jaime Salazar on his team that is very good.
Right.
Between that team, they can help coordinate, passing along of information. You're right, I don't see my emails timely enough to
Right.
respond quickly, but Saul is on top of that.
Right.
But that's why our staff is here.
And I've always bothered him. So for years now, I've been bothering him. So we know each other.
So he's an extension of our office. Amy will be as well, and
Okay.
they'll continue the dialogue so that we continue to keep those communication lines open, and so that you know exactly where we stand
Right.
on our status.
And just to let you know, we didn't know that we had two other options on this. And so ACC was completely focused in, hey, we have this timeline. We're going to start, getting costs for demolition. We're going to get costs for the security fencing. We actually consulted with two separate attorneys on this. And so this is great news, and it's going to be a relief for several of the members in here. Unfortunately, they're going to come after probably Monty and I on this too. So, but it's all good.
Here's the thing that we all need to be aware of, is that generally the better option takes a little bit more time.
Mhm.
When we build a road, we tend to take our time and put drainage in
Right.
so as to protect the road, but it adds months to the job. But at
Right.
the end of the day, when it's all said and done, we have a better product. I think if we just take our time and make sure we explore the options here,
Right.
just give us a little bit more time. I know that this has been on the radar for some time.
Right.
But let us, now that we've had the discussion about the other options, let us put together a good solid plan, come back to you, and we can share those ideas
got
and
it.
come to a better conclusion.
And our only action item for us is to consult with the landowner of that east land, that farmland, south land.
Well, yeah, I would
And
say,
see-
wait till they come back. and
Yeah.
they're-
Okay.
You can have maybe an introduction, but we
Okay.
don't know what the actual plan will call for.
Right.
If I may, I would wait.
Okay.
right?
Okay.
I would let us come
Yep.
back and say, this is probably,
That landowner's not too happy with us, they lost the batch plant. So it may be a difficult.
Oh, no, David, it's Joan Gerhardt's
Joan
land.
Gerhardt.
John Gerhardt's
Joan
land.
Gerhardt.
And that farmer, we did him a big favor that's leasing that
Yes.
land with the concrete batch plant.
Yes.
So we do have some leverage there at
Okay,
least.
great.
So we're not talking about
Yeah,
Texas
good.
Cordia.
Well, we'll come up with the plan first. 'Cause we don't wanna
Okay.
we don't want to be
I
premature.
just
about
want to
Okay.
say, I want to thank you for being so willing to work with us. And I want to say that we're the same way. We really would like to work with you to try to get the best option here. And if that requires us to do something in terms of buying land or whatever, we certainly would be willing to look into it. But we'd like to work together as much as possible.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Oh, go
I just
ahead.
think it's important to say that, we want to work for the best option for ACC because that's our job. But we also realize that we're a small part of the area,
Mhm.
and that your job is to work for what's best for the county and the area. And, sometimes those may not jive and, we may not like it, but we understand that.
At the end of the day, we're trying to protect life and property.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that if we can come up with a plan that works for both of us to accomplish that while keeping the costs at a minimum, we'll be successful.
And we
Agreed.
really appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, Commissioner Fuentes, thank you. Raul, Amy, and Saul, thank you for being here this morning. And I know that the ACC had a lot of questions, which it makes it easier for them now to understand about the options that you have given them.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And thank you again. It's always good. The communication and open
Yeah.
lines really
Mhm.
makes a big difference. I think it makes us all feel a little bit more comfortable knowing that direction we're going. I would encourage you to get with Saul, make sure
Yes.
that we have the emails correct.
We'll do.
Please start an email dialogue so that you can
Do you all have?
keep that going.
So what I'll do, I'll email you and I'll have all the folks copied on there from our end. Okay.
Should we get
Because I have you.
Absolutely. Amy.
I'll bother.
Yeah, she'll write it down for you.
That's it.
So I'll just reply with her email.
That's it. That's perfect then. That's it, right? Amy, girl, I'll be bothering you like I've done in the past too. We're introducing each other. We're like, we know each other. So we've been down this road.
Obviously, you know Saul, you know
Yes.
Raul, and then Amy Science Smith. is
Right.
part of the team. I failed to introduce my team. I apologize.
No worries.
Great.
Do you guys want a water or a donut for the ride home? You know?
Thank you so much.
All right,
you.
Mayor,
Thank
can
you.
you just stay back? And then the rest of us?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin. I'll be meeting on you soon.
Yes.
Mr. Sessom, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, girl. See you
Don't
later.
forget to email because yeah, my.
I know, he's just, thank you, David.
Hi, it was nice
Bye.
meeting you. Thank you so much. It was nice meeting you.
Let's stop recording.
Thank you,
Yes,
Rose.
we will. And you'll get
I'm gonna end it right now, girl.
Okay, thank you.